why wouldn't we think, hey, De'Aaron Fox is if Harrison Barnes, like if he can't keep up this pace where he's playing great, why can't De'Aaron Fox pick up the pace and play better? Like we're so certain 13 games into the season, Harrison Barnes isn't going to be able to continue to do this. But so many people are so certain that De'Aaron Fox, this is who he is. And anybody's welcome to respond to that. Or you could just be so stunned by that incredible take that you're like, that's the show, walk it off, just go dark for the next 2.5 hours.
So I'll answer like this because De'Aaron is like 19 and 6 or something like that. De'Aaron, aside from last year, which it could be getting better, it was his 4th year in the league, that he's gone back to essentially what he is. Right? Like until proven differently, essentially he's 19 to 22 points a night. It feels like he's not 27 points a night like he did in the second half of the season last year. And that's where people were like, oh, he could be that. He could be 25 to 27. It doesn't feel, and your point is valid. You could be 100% right about this, but it doesn't feel after seeing De'Aaron Fox play and like not even like the things that are keeping him from that are still there. They've still been there. He's not a great shooter. He's not a great free throw shooter. Like these things, free throw shooting is probably the easiest thing to improve on throughout his career, and he's never improved on it really. So this is just kind of who he is. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, hey, I think that who De'Aaron Fox is, I mean, we're seeing like a watered down version right now. I think we're finally starting to see him start to pick it up. But at some point, like this team needs to realize what they're doing wrong and fix it. And I know that sounds so simple, but to watch the same silly mistakes, to watch a team come out in their opening possession and turn it over, like on your opening possession, you knew coming into the day what the plan was. You knew what that opening play was going to look like. You knew what you were looking for, who you were trying to get open first, and you didn't execute. And I'm not going to say, oh, look, the coach he didn't have you ready. Like if you're not ready to walk in, and we're not talking about kids. We're talking about a 5th-year point guard. We're talking about, we're talking about Rashawn Holmes and Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield. And like the core of this team is the same as it's been. It's the same as it was under Yeager, except for Rashawn Holmes, Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox, and Harrison Barnes. At some point, you have to take accountability for the mistakes, the ridiculously bad mistakes you make in the fourth quarter and the final seconds of games. And that goes for like De'Aaron Fox had his turnover, but that's like the 4th one this season already where he's turned the ball over in the final minutes of a game that cost you a game. Buddy Hield, same thing. Hit your shots when it matters. And he doesn't. And so I would like to say, oh, it's just, it's just like an anomaly. He missed some shots. Well, no, that's not the way it goes. Buddy Hield normally misses shots in the final minutes of games. Like somebody has to step up and play. So like, do I think that Walton has been outcoached here and there? Sure. Like there are games where I look at it and I go, okay, like San Antonio, I'll just circle the San Antonio game. Everyone was so excited because De'Aaron Fox goes for 37, right? If you didn't think that was by design, then you're crazy. The Kings have one playmaker on the roster with Tyrese Halliburton on the sidelines. It's De'Aaron Fox. Go ahead and let him score. If he's scoring, he's not making anyone else better. And that's a problem. And so I think roster construction, this team does not have enough playmakers. It's why I promoted the thought of going out and getting a guy like Ben Simmons time and time again. But when you have all of your players outside of De'Aaron, all of them are averaging below their career averages in assists per game, assist percentage. Then you have guys that just randomly disappear for 3 games because they're not getting their shots, and they don't disappear just on the offensive end. They're ghosts on the defensive end as well because they're not getting their shots. Like these are issues that you got to find the root of the issue and you need to fix it. And it's not because of Luke Walton doesn't know how to coach or, I mean, like, because everyone should know Alvin Gentry would be the guy who's going to take over this team if Luke Walton does get let go. And Alvin Gentry has been the offensive coordinator and the associate head coach for the last season and a half. This is as much his team as it is Luke Walton's team. What are you going to get that's different? And it's certainly not a long-term thing. What are you going to get that's different? So I'm confused with where this team is, but I also think hitting a panic button at game 13 is just, it's so Kings. It is. It's just again and again and again, the same exact thing. Michael Malone was out at what, like 21, 22 games. I'll tell you this, Dave Yeager knew full well that he had 20 games in his final season. He had 20 games and then he was getting fired. The only reason he didn't get fired was because he got lightning in a bottle and everyone was having a good time. And even then, they had an assistant general manager go to the press and try to get him fired. 20 games into a season. This is an issue that keeps happening with this team. Somebody has to figure out what that core issue is and fix that, as opposed to trying to treat these weird little symptoms that keep popping up.
James Ham, 1320. Proper introduction. 1320 Kings Insider, James Ham with us here on D'Lo and KC. Obviously, you just alluded to the report out there from The Athletic that Luke Walton is on the hot seat. James, I can tell in your delivery there, you have covered this team through bad. You know, most people say, "Oh, you've been through the good and the bad." Not you, James. You've only been through the bad, and you sound exhausted talking about a potential coaching change. What I just wonder is, it's out there now, James. Like this, you can't be. What's this? You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah,
you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like it's out there now, and now fans are on high alert for Luke Walton being fired. If the Kings lose against the Pistons, if the Kings lose against the Timberwolves, like who does this benefit having this story out there?
Well, that's the biggest question, because like if you're really looking for like answers on that question, like firing Luke Walton is your escape clause if you're management. That's your escape clause. And if this thing unwinds like it has in the past when they try to replace a coach mid-season, who do you think is going to be next? I mean, certainly, you know, they just wouldn't bring back Alvin Gentry for another season. But if you're the one who commandeered the Titanic, like you go down with the ship like everybody else does. Like we're at the brink again. And my problem with that is that you're 3 games under 500. You got 2 winnable games in front of you. Like everyone just needs to calm down, because what we're talking about is destructive. Like if Luke Walton is out, it is destructive. It is not a positive thing, whether some fans believe that or not. It will be destructive to a team that has already shown that they do not have the intestinal fortitude to step up and take ownership of what's happening already. So you think like Luke called bad plays? I don't know. I don't think so. Like he had Chimezie Metu wide open at the rim. De'Aaron Fox didn't pass him the ball. You know, did everyone love the last play set? You know, we would have had to wait to see where that play set went, where Fox turned the ball over. I didn't like him going up against Lou Dort, but you know what I would have liked? A real screen for De'Aaron Fox and take Lou Dort, the best defensive player, out of the sequence, and now he switched on to somebody else. That's where we're talking about the little things that this team is missing. There is no way that was by design for De'Aaron Fox to go one-on-one against Lou Dort for the final play. The idea is to get him one-on-one and then pick him off and switch on to a lesser defender. That's the game. We didn't get that far because mistakes were made again. And so at some point, like somebody has to take ownership of or a bunch of people need to start packing their bags and getting ready, because this thing is going to get unwound so quickly, and rightfully so. Like how many years, again, this is my 12th season. I have like the worst win-loss record as a beat writer that anyone has ever seen. And it's not one coach. It's not one general manager. It's not one player. It's all of it. It's not even one owner. Like we've gone through 2 ownerships here. Like they've got to figure out what is causing the problem, cut it out, and move forward. And again, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. I'm saying they need to figure out what that is, because that's always the biggest problem. Like if you got to you have to search for the thing that is rotting the core. And if you can't find it, then that's even a bigger problem. And clearly for 15 years, they haven't been able to find it.
And you know what, James, you're spot on with everything that you said just now. I look at this whole thing with, the story coming out about Luke Walton possibly being on the hot seat and everything like that. And I understand, it doesn't benefit anybody, or you're on the verge of destruction or whatever. But I've been saying this since the summer. I have no problem with everybody in that locker room, everybody in that front office being on edge. I know you said calm down. No, everybody's been pretty chill, pretty comfortable for the last 15 years, and that hasn't worked. There needs to be a level of, you don't get it done, you're out. Starting with Luke. Luke is gone. Well, you might be on the trading block, or you might be here. You might get it, whatever the case may be. There needs to be a sense of urgency all throughout that place. And when you have a situation where you blow an 18-point lead against a team that, whether or not you think they're better than the Kings or not, they're not one of the top teams in the league. They shouldn't be coming back from 18 on you. That just tells me you relax far too easy. And that needs to go. Like, there needs to be a sense of urgency on the court, in the locker room, in the front office. So I don't really have a problem with the story about Luke coming out. And it really, at least is out there. Hey, you turn this around or he's gone.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get that. I do get that. And again, I've told you guys countless times, I'm not sure who Luke is as a coach. I mean, we've gotten to a point where, like, he has not been able to define who he is. And maybe that's the biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's 6-5. I mean, at 5-4, everyone was pretty hot and like, hey, this is cool. We got something here. Now we're like a week later. I mean, it's barely a week from the Kings lambasting the Charlotte Hornets, just crushing them. Like, and now we're at the same place we always are. And I haven't seen a lack of effort. I think that this team plays hard. I see it every single night. I don't see like them taking a bunch of plays off. I just feel like that there's something missing. And then the other thing I keep hearing is like, we have to find our consistency. We have to find our consistency. You found it. Your consistency is being inconsistent. That's what it is. So until you change who and what you are as a group, then that's who we're going to consider you. Like a bad bet. That's what you are. You're someone that you should never bet like is going to win a game, because they just show it every single time. They have a major problem with finding success and then maintaining success. But at the same time, like I look at, like, I'm looking at the numbers, and some of the numbers are just startling. Like, I wrote about it this weekend. When you're looking at, De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, and Davion Mitchell as your three guys that are leading the team in assist percentage, Alex Len should not be number 4. And Damian Jones should not be number 5 on your team in assist percentage. And Buddy Hield, who just barely creeped over 10%, that's an embarrassment. That's your number 6 assist percentage guy, and he's barely over the top. So, like, I think we missed some things when we looked at and we analyzed like how they were piecing together the roster early on. Guys like Mo Harkless, you think, okay, we just need him to play defense. That's all we need him to do. Well, then you look, and literally that's the only thing he's done. He doesn't shoot threes. He doesn't rebound. And he's gone multiple games with a 0 assist percentage. We've had games recently, Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes, 0 assist percentage. Like, they are not making their teammates better. And again, I don't want to see people pouting because they're not getting enough shots. Like, that's the NBA. That's the like pact that you signed when you came into the league, that some nights you're going to get a bunch of shots. Other nights you're not going to get any shots at all. That's it's some next level Jason Thompson stuff, where the dude in year 8 is asking, when am I going to get my shot at 12 shots a game? Well, the answer is never. The answer is you're not getting those in Turkey. Like, that's the answer. And so these guys need to figure out what their roles are. They need to play to their strengths. They need to create for each other and make each other better. And that's where I think we're at this point. They can't make each other better. And so somebody has to figure out how to like blend them together to make them better, or you got to switch out pieces. That's it.
Yeah.
there's a lot more to talk about. You're talking about roster construction, which I have a question about. We got to talk about De'Aaron Fox, and you talk about these consistently inconsistent. Well, the issues that this team has, the consistently inconsistent, has been consistent now for a handful of years. We'll talk to James Ham a lot more about this. There's a lot more ahead, and at the top of the 2:00 hour, we're going to send you to see this fantastic basketball team that drives us crazy. We have got tickets for the Kings in Portland coming up on the 24th. So you can experience this all in person. That's on the way. James Ham is going nowhere. It's Delon and KC here on this 49ers Monday, brought to you by Gilmore Heating, Air, and Plumbing. Right now, Gilmore is offering Niner fans a $49 furnace safety inspection. Just mention this ad. You get more with Gilmore on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320.
All right. Sorry if I dove in.
Oh, that's what you're here for. That's great.
Yeah,
nice. It's the first time in an hour and a half Kenny hasn't been yelling at me.
Yeah. I haven't been able to listen. I've been actually writing on this situation and piecing it together in my head. And it's, it's a bummer because it's just the same exact story again and again and again and again. Just back up, have some perspective. I don't think you're not going to let Luke lose 9 games in a row again. I get that, but outside of that, have some perspective, and the team needs to step up. If they're enjoying Luke as a head coach, which I know that they do, I know they haven't turned on him, and we could discuss this on the thing, but we beat this topic down so much. It has nothing to do with the Marvin Bagley situation. This team, they've moved on. As a team, not just as Walton has moved on. I mean, as a team, they've moved on. That has no bearing. Whatever's happening with him has no bearing on the personality of this team at all. There's no one going, hey, maybe we should go get my boy Marvin some more shots and some more minutes here. That's just not happening. This is who they're rolling with, and as of right now, they're just well, we got to figure it out. But you just can't keep saying that.
And James, the thing that I continue to go back to is, even if you don't believe or like Luke Walton or whatever the case may be, if you're the guys on that roster, your name's on this test. Your name is out here looking bad. And that alone, to me, should be well, even if I don't rock with this coach, I don't want my name embarrassed. I don't want my name looked at as some being part of some kind of joke. Let me step up and get in this defensive stance, or let me take care of the basketball, because you can say whatever you want. Luke Walton, aside from a zoom out shot or whatever, he's not on the tape. You're on the tape making the turnover. You're on the tape taking the bad 3. And just the personal pride should be there. I don't want to say I never, because there's certain situations like I said, like a John Gruden earlier, where if I was in that situation, maybe I'd be like, I ain't really listening to this guy. But for the most part, the whole quit on the coach thing, you're still the one that's out there having to have your face be a part of what's going on. And I couldn't be out there looking bad on my own.
Hey, the core, I mean, a lot of these guys have been together 4 years. It's on you. You've got to figure this out. If you think you're a good basketball player, then you got to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not sure, then that's a whole nother problem. But I mean, these guys are confident dudes. They think that that they got something. And it's okay, well, show it to me. Don't lose to bad teams. And clearly the Kings haven't proven that they're not a bad team. So, I mean, that's always tough, but you can't have the momentary lapses that they have that roll into 4 games. And then how many games do they roll? If you don't take advantage of this 4-game road trip, which you've already blown the first 2, if you don't take advantage, this is one of the few spots in the entire schedule where you can just you should have been able to circle and say 4 wins. Let's go on to the next section. And you blew it. You already blew it. So that's a problem. And it's, again, it's an accountability problem. They have like, I don't think it's an effort problem. I think they want to win. I think they just like they get too much into like, oh, I've got to be the one that does this. Like they need me to do more. And again, sometimes it's doing less. Like take a deep breath and set a proper screen. Like again, we all knew what was happening with that. It's like a 1-4 flat. The plan is to quickly shift you onto a worse defender and have you go to work and maybe create something for someone else.
Hang on
And
one
then-
second, Hammer.
Yeah.
You could discover hundreds of new exclusive stations available now for sports and music fans, by sports and music fans. The new Odyssey exclusive stations on the Odyssey app, brought to you in part by Macy's, Geico, and Coke Zero Sugar. We welcome those watching the show as well on twitch.tv/ESPN1320 and youtube.com/ESPN1320. If you're watching, we hope that you'll hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button as well. We got a poll question posted up right there. Pretty surprised by the results that have come in so far. Are you rooting for Luke Walton to get fired? 53% say yes, 47% say no, a significantly closer margin than we expected. And I really don't think, I'm not a fan of Luke Walton. I don't think any Kings fan should be rooting for him to get fired, because much like James Ham said there a moment ago, I don't know that this is a Nate McMillan in Atlanta situation where you get better by an in-season coaching change. I think this is just where some more angst and frustration gets created. And you were talking about, James, just a moment ago, roster construction issues and playmakers. In hindsight, and perhaps not in hindsight, because we were scratching our heads at the time, as much as we like him now, was moving on from Delon Wright. Was the Delon Wright Tristan Thompson trade a mistake?
Yeah, see, that's a tough one. I mean, first of all, Delon Wright's not getting any time in Atlanta, right?
None.
He's just kind of like spinning his tires. I think you needed the toughness. I think you needed the rebounding. I certainly know, again, the biggest issue they had there was the draft and free agency were so squished together that you were looking at a draft like on a Thursday and free agency was like a couple of days later.
Mm-hmm.
And going into the draft, they didn't have a single big man on the roster outside of Marvin Bagley. So that's why they made that swap. They knew who they were getting in the draft. They had a good idea who they were getting in the draft. They knew they needed at least a backup center in case they couldn't sign Rashawn Holmes or Alex Len. They honestly did believe that it was a long shot to sign Rashawn Holmes. They did not think it would be that easy to sign him. And they also had the deal for Montrezl Harrell and Kyle Kuzma worked out like the day before. So you got to remember all of these, like that trade fell through on draft day. Like that whole thing was supposed to like change the whole direction of this team. And then what would have happened on Friday? What would have happened on Saturday as free agency opened? So it was really chaotic, like the way that this whole thing worked out, how quickly you had to build it. Now, I just look at it. If you're going to come into the season, you have 5 guards that can play. You got to figure out different combinations of those guards to make sure that all 5 of them are succeeding, which we have not seen. Davion has been, about 50% of the time he's been strong offensively. The other 50% of the time he is not, which is fine because he's a rookie. Halliburton had early season struggles. Fox had early season struggles. Harrison Barnes was so good. Rashawn Holmes was great early, and then he had a stretch where, like, he just, wasn't getting the ball, but it was impacting other parts of his game as well.
Mhm.
And you have to be able to make adjustments throughout a season, and 13 games is way too small of a sample size. I don't think anyone should make any decision on a team much longer than this, but I almost feel like there's someone who always has a calendar out and is like, okay, where's the 20-game mark? And I'm going to fire my coach by that point. And if it's not working out, like I'm ready to bail. And it's like, look, sometimes you need to let this thing play out. Like Walton's teams have struggled historically throughout the first part of the season. And then they ramp up and they're really good by midseason. And you're like, oh, maybe we do have something. So I think you have to kind of let this.
I don't think a Luke Walton team has ever been really good.
Well,
Maybe
no,
they're better.
Yeah, I mean, leading into the bubble, like,
They were
well, into the shutdown, I mean,
19-6 or something like
they were
that.
13-7 over their final 20 games after
Mm.
they did the Bogdanovich and Buddy Hield swap in the starting lineup, and they were rolling, and they had the Pelicans that night, and if they beat the Pelicans that night,
Yeah,
they were the
okay.
odds-on favorite to make the playoffs, and then we get stuck in a global pandemic. Everything shuts down. So I think you have to kind of look at, like, where is the break point where you kind of give in, and what is the advantage of switching a coach at this moment versus the All-Star break? Like, what's the advantage? Because at the All-Star break, you will know whether your team has any shot at all. And if you still got a shot, then you kind of ride it out. And then you can make that decision in the final 25, 30 games as to what you have and what you don't. And then you go into the offseason like, okay, if we need to hit the reset button, let's hit a strong reset button and let's go do a full coaching search and we'll do all that stuff. But that's like, it should be months away from where we are right now. And so I'm surprised because as of even last week, Amit came on the Kings Beat podcast and we had a long discussion about this exact thing. And both of us were getting the same exact vibe from the organization that Walton was safe. Like, yeah, they're going to ride with Walton. And if things go well, he might have next year as well. But that is this franchise in a nutshell. Like, the finger snap and things change. And we're literally talking about one game since that
Whose fingers
happened.
are snapping?
You
don't
know,
have to answer that if you don't want to.
no, no, because I'll say this, like, this is a different feel of being around the team than it has been in past years. So I think that there was, for a couple of years, there was what I call like a corporatization of the basketball side, which is never a good thing. So once you start allowing like the corporate side to start making decisions on things like the injury report and stuff like that, then, you've lost, because now you have a group of reporters who can't trust you because you're dabbling in something that you shouldn't be dabbling in. No team should ever make decisions on an injury report based on the 6-game homestand that's coming up and needing to sell tickets. That's just not the way it should ever go. And so I think a lot of that stuff has been separated, and it feels a lot better right now than it has in the past. But that's still, like, the inner workings of this franchise are a mystery. They still are. I mean, like, we've had good conversations with Monty here and there. Wes Wilcox is part of that discussion, Ken Catanella, but where does Vivek and where does Joe Dumars still stand? Like, there is still a lot of uneasiness about, like, just the overall structure and who's responsible for what at the end of the day. And so, like, I'm not sure that I know exactly, like, the moment someone does like the Thanos snap the fingers and half these people disappear and they've got to go somewhere else. I don't know when that moment's happening, or if it's just one person who does that. But I certainly know that, like, historically, we're in this same situation every time, and you can't just repeat the same exact thing and expect a different outcome. And that's what I feel like we're caught in the middle of, this insanity. Like, just calm down, let it play out. Again, no coach has in since Adelman left, no Sacramento Kings coach has gone into their 4th season of their contract. Not one. So Dave Yeager didn't get a 4th season. Paul Westphal didn't get a 4th. No one gets a 4th season. That's just a recipe for disaster. Like, you have to at some point find a voice and stick with it. Now, if someone proves to be, like, completely incompetent and totally crazy and you got to move on from them, that's a different situation. But that's kind of not where we've been. And so eventually, hopefully they'll learn from the mistakes. But I think me thinking that is me being crazy, because I've seen it repeat itself. And for me to think that anything would be different, then that's, again, the definition of insanity. Because I shouldn't feel that way, because they've proven time and time again that this is the path that happens. And then we just repeat the same path again and again.
James, we talked about it a little bit off air, but I'd like to hear you expand more on it, on air. As this team tuned out Luke Walton, has he lost the locker room, in your opinion, from everything that you're hearing and seeing?
No, not that I've seen. I mean, now I'll say this: we're in COVID times. It's a little different, right? So we're not allowed in that locker room, where we can start seeing like the signs, the signs of cracking. But we talk to the players nonstop, and I don't think any of them are like on a bender to get Luke Walton fired. I mean, outside of like what we've seen in the past from Team Bagley, we haven't really seen anything from this group that says like, look, they're trying to get Walton out. For my point of view, like even like Harrison Barnes, the last time he spoke, he said, no, it's the players. Like we have to execute. We can't just keep failing at like the finer nuances of the game. They keep costing us. And like, and again, consistency and stuff like that. But like what we were talking about off air with Marvin, this isn't Marvin Bagley hangover either. Like the team isn't sitting there like, oh, this has messed everything up, the Bagley situation. I don't think it's messed anything up at all for either the positive or the negative. Like there isn't like a schism in the locker room where half the people are Team Bagley and half the people are like anti. That's just not happening. This team has moved on from that situation, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy's played 10 minutes all year. That's how the team views him. Like either you fit or you don't. But as of right now, this is our group. We're moving forward. And so, like, again, I'm not going to blame anything on his people or him. And I'm also not, it's just not impactful to this team. They've moved on, like from what I can tell mentally.
Did you happen to see Mark Spears' tweet over the weekend? It wasn't up very long, about Marvin Bagley.
I saw it. Yeah. I love Mark.
I do too. We texted him this morning. He didn't respond. Like I'm not trying to. It was a weird tweet about Marvin Bagley, and it was odd because of the Dave Yeager news and our thoughts are with Dave Yeager. It was weird, and then it was gone. I was curious your opinion on it.
Yeah. So I learned a long time ago, don't play media police. And that's not for you guys. That's fine. Like it's a topic of discussion. For someone who covers the league, like on a daily basis in the league, I choose to, when someone says something that I don't agree with, or that I'm kind of stunned by, a lot of times I just kind of, again, it's not my job to say, hey, why did you write that? Why did you put that out there, Mark? Or for that matter, Sam. Like this entire conversation we're having is a source told somebody, right? So it's not my job to like A, chase down their source, or B, like accuse them of having a source that has a motivation or anything like that. So I tend to like back away from it. Now, you did bring up Dave, and I will say this. I did text with Dave this weekend. The second text was, how are my guys? So if that tells you like anything about Dave, I mean, I feel for him. He's, I think he's a year older than me. Both of his girls are a year older than both of my boys. And so like we got close as far as people when he was in Sacramento. Sorry if you hear my dogs bark. But I feel bad for him in this situation, and I'm hoping that everything's okay. We did text back and forth. They got it early and all that stuff, and they're hoping that they can move past this quickly. But he's in for a lot of pain. He's in for a lot of suffering. But again, the second thing he said after, hey, I'm good. How are you? I think I'm going to be fine, was how are my guys? And, there is an attachment to players here in Sacramento, and Dave still feels that. So a good dude. I wish nothing but the best. I hope it works out for him. Not fun to be in that situation.
Yeah, man. Prayers up to Dave Yeager, and we got a bunch of prayers, and we're sending them up for him as he starts on this journey, man. And we know he'll pull through that. No easy segue, but back to the Kings. The other thing that's important, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, it's important, to remember with that, the tweet or the story that came out today is to me, I read it as, it's not like, well, if he loses in Detroit, he's gone. It's just simply like, if this thing isn't looking like it's going towards the playoffs, doesn't have no time, nothing like that. Doesn't look like it's going towards the playoffs. They're not going to give him the benefit of the doubt like they did last year.
I took it differently.
How'd
I
you-
took it as we ain't getting a 9. That's how I read it. We ain't getting a 9. We're at 4. We're not getting a 9.
Yeah,
9
that's
losing streak. Yeah.
well, and I don't even think it's 9, to be honest with you. Like, if you look at the 2 games on the schedule that are coming up, if you look at Monday and you look at Wednesday, those are both winnable games. And I'm not saying he has to win both, but he might have to win both. And then Thursday is a day where, you know, the team comes back into town, and those are usually times where you reassess and everyone gets back into one room together and they make decisions. So I don't know that we're at a point where it's going to fall apart and it's going to snap and they're going to let him go. I think it could get dragged out, but I also think that, like, you look at these 2 games, if you don't win these 2 games, you're in trouble as a team. You're in trouble, and whether that's on Luke or it's on something has to change at that point. And that's where I think you're going to get the vibe from this team go, like, in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Kenny, I interrupted you. Did you? Was there
No,
like a?
you guys both smoke. It's just putting it out there. Like I didn't think that if he won the next 2, oh, he's safe. Everything's good. Or if, you know, he loses, then he'd be gone. So maybe he is gone after losing another 2. But I feel like a lot of people, like if he won these next 2, like it's not all good.
Right.
Like the report doesn't go away. You know what I mean? Like
all better. That is not a hit record. It's all better is not a hit record.
Well, that, and you look at what's coming next. That's the problem. You look at what's coming next, that, like, these 2 games could mean nothing. Like, if you do win them, it's like, okay, well, you beat 2 teams that are really bad. But then, like, you got the Lakers, you got the Clippers. I mean, the schedule gets much more difficult when they get back.
Mhm.
And so I understand what you're saying there. Like, all is not well. If you somehow figure out a way to go 2-0 in the next 2 games, it's not like all of this is going away. What it will do is it quiet it down for a week or 2, and then we'll see how it goes. But, you know, it's not a great schedule. I mean, like, what lies ahead, and that's why you have to take care of these situations. You've got to take care of games that are winnable early in a season, so you don't get in this situation early.
Real quick, fellas, you're listening to D'Lo and KC along with 1320 Kings insider James Ham here on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento and Odyssey Station. And driven by Lashers, Elk Grove Dodge. And, well, why not go see him in person? We've got 2 tickets to see the Sacramento Kings take on Portland on November 24th. Caller number 3 right now, 916-349-1320. We'll get you all set up. Again, 2 tickets to see the Sacramento Kings against Portland November 24th. That's 916-349-1320.
You know, I actually like going to see the Kings in person. It's a good time out. Like, I wish they would win, but it's a good time out. Going One Center.
See Dame Dollar too.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Not
maybe.
right now.
It's a good call. James, there's, you know, you talked about we haven't spent a lot of time digging into the actual issues that this team has on the basketball floor. And one of the biggest ones, it reared its head again in the Oklahoma City Thunder game, and that they appear to be incapable of playing 4 quarters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem that you have in the NBA is the first 3 quarters are just a warm up to get to the 4th. The 4th quarter is where, you know, it's the witching hour. It's where wins become wins and losses become losses. I mean, that's the Kings have just an inability to close out games. And even, you know, again, we talked about De'Aaron Fox being such a good closer last year. He was such a good closer on a 31-win team. So how many did he close? Because, I mean, the answer is not that many. Did he score points in the 4th quarter? Sure. But did he win in the 4th quarter? No, this team still has to figure out how to win. And, you know, the fact that they really haven't been blown out outside of like 1 game, like, it shows you something. But at the same time, like, we can't keep trying to learn the basic lessons. You have to figure out how to close out games. It is what it is. Like, and again, I don't want to point it, like, I don't think it's a coaching issue when I see players make mistakes that are unforced turnovers, unforced errors in crunch time. That's a player like not rising up to the moment. And you don't have to be perfect and you don't have to hit every shot. You know, Harrison Barnes hit the game winner early in the season. He also missed one, right? A couple of games ago where he had a shot and could have either won or tied a game at the buzzer. You're not going to hit every shot, but what you have to do is consistently show that you're ready to play and that you're in it all the way to the final, you know, whistle. Like, and I don't want to blame refs. I don't want to blame anyone else. Go win a game. And I know, like, even the De'Aaron Fox turnover against OKC, like Harrison Barnes said, like, we were up 18. I don't want to hear about the last play of the game. Like, I don't want to hear about it. Like, the last play of the game, a mistake was made. But what about like the 8 other mistakes that were made in like the third quarter? Like, that's where we lost the game. It's not in the final seconds. We should have just been up by 20 and not had to worry about that. You know, the starter shouldn't even been in the game. They should have been watching from the sidelines because you blew out a team. And they didn't do it. They didn't put the hammer down and finish off a team. So this team has a bunch of small issues, but you don't feel like there's like, outside of the fact that I think they need more playmaking and that they don't pass the ball nearly as much as they should. They don't have any huge glaring issue. They just can't figure out how to get over the hump.
I don't think this team has any leadership on that roster. There's a lot of guys that are good. I know Harrison has his style of leading. As much as I respect it, as much as I like it, that's not enough. You know what I mean? They need somebody that, and we talked about Tristan Thompson or whatever, but Tristan Thompson barely plays every other game. Like, they don't have anybody when that league goes to 18-12 to like get in everybody's face if need be. And I only say that because I think I'm not saying that's the only way that you can lead, but the other way has already, like, we've already seen, like, not saying anything, being quiet, being, you know, kind of reserved and passive. And that doesn't work. Like, they continue to blow leads. So now let's try something else. Let's not just say, well, there's more than one way to lead. Well, the way that they've been doing it or trying to do it hasn't worked. And they don't have a guy that's going to stand up and, if it takes yelling a bunch of expletives and saying this ain't happening right now, you need to do better. You need to do, I need to do less. They don't have that right now. Do you look at that as a glaring issue with this team as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have, like, in a way, they have different types of leaders, and they also have some young guys who are becoming who they're going to become. They're becoming leaders, but they aren't there yet. Like, look, I think there are so few guys in the NBA that are just flat out the dude, right? Like LeBron, Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler. They're just flat out the guy. And I think most of the other teams in the league, they do it by some weird, like, again, look at the Brooklyn Nets. Like, who on that team would you say is a quote unquote leader? Like, Kevin Durant is their best player. James Harden is their second best player. But who is that voice? Who's the guy that would yell and scream and get in your face? I don't think they really, I mean, it's certainly not Blake Griffin. So who is it? And so I think you would love to have just like this overwhelming guy who's your best player and who does all of these things, but you end up losing that guy to a big market because he's a superstar. And so I just don't think the Kings can't go out and shop for that guy. You basically have to find guys who are like Tristan Thompson that are sort of the, I don't know, understated, or the guys that have grown up in a system and know how to lead in a moment, or they know how to pull a guy aside and show leadership to an individual. You know, you would hope that they would develop and they would find that one guy, but it is kind of hard when, you know, both Harrison Barnes and De'Aaron Fox, they're more reserve. You know, they are reserve people. Now, it's why you also hear Walton talk about, like, Tyrese Halliburton needs to imprint on this team, because he's not. He's a total extrovert who's all over the board and who's fun and all that stuff. But again, does he have like that force, that nature that you're looking for? So I think, like, again, these guys are still developing on who they can be. I think that Davion Mitchell can be a leader, but he's also really, really quiet. But on the court, he's not. So you got to figure out how to piece it all together. And that's one of the biggest issues the Kings have. They've spun their tires for a long time, waiting for someone to like grab this team and drag them through. I don't even know if there's a coach out there that you can just point to and say, oh man, he would be the guy that pulled us through this whole mess and made us a superstar team. And there's only, again, like Eric Spoelstra is incredible. There are leaders, Popovich, of course, there are guys that can make a difference as coaches, but even coaches for a lot Frank Vogel won a championship last year. Do you think that was his championship? I mean, he has a ring and he's a solid coach, but that's because the Lakers are really good, or 2 years ago. You know what I mean? Like Monty Williams is a really good coach and he's a good leader. He also had no business being in the bubble at all because his team was so bad before the bubble. And when they went 8-0, they were so bad before. And then the next year they come up and they make it to the Western Conference Finals. So like they're just moments and think like certain players, certain coaches, they have a moment where it all makes sense and it all works out. And the Kings just haven't had that moment, or that player who steps up, elevates himself into some other category and becomes that guy that you hope they would be.
I feel like you kind of alluded to this earlier, James. Maybe you just flat out said it, but you talked about De'Aaron's scoring output against San Antonio with Tyrese being out. Does Tyrese and De'Aaron as a starting combination, or as a combination on the floor together, does that work?
I think it does if Fox is hitting his shots. I think it's a bit of a struggle if you don't have a third shooter. So like, I think, again, one of the issues that we saw is Mo Harkless isn't hitting anything from the outside. Rashawn Holmes isn't a 3-point shooter, and De'Aaron Fox started the season cold. So how do you have a starting lineup that is based off of spacing when you have 3 guys who are basically non-shooters? And that's a problem. So even like adding Chimezie Metu to the starting lineup, to me, that was like, all right. Chimezie came out and hoisted 8 threes. It's not even whether he hit 3 out of them, but that didn't matter. The fact that he was shooting them spaced the floor. It opened things up. It made things easier for other players. And sometimes that's what you need. So yeah, I mean, I think that this backcourt, it is your starting backcourt for the future, and it's not like groupings like this haven't worked in the past. It's just you're waiting for that moment where, they start feeding off of each other. And I think as of right now, they have not done a good job of, you see Tyrese do the 2-man game with Rashawn Holmes, but he never kicks out to De'Aaron for the wide open 3. You see Fox break down the defense, but there are guys that are getting left out of each of these. And basically, I think the Kings have become slightly predictable, or majorly predictable, in their offensive sets, because it's either De'Aaron Fox and Harrison Barnes, or it's Tyrese Halliburton and Rashawn Holmes. And sometimes Halliburton kicks to the corner for a wide open 3 for Mo Harkless. So I just think that they repeat the same things again and again, and it becomes slightly predictable. So I think long-term, this has got to be the group. This has got to be the 2 guys that are your like featured players. But you got to get them both up to a spot where, first of all, Fox is having a disaster of a start to the season. He's done much better in the last, week and a half, but before that it was like rough. And Halliburton didn't have a great start either. And so they're just trying to figure each other out and how to work through all of like the little things that are happening. And then on top of that, Halliburton misses a couple of games and it kind of throws a monkey wrench in everything. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but that's your group. It has to be.
You think De'Aaron is feeling the pressure of everything that comes with being the guy here, whether it's the contract, whether it's the postseason, not making the postseason, things of that nature for the last 15 years. A lot of people, myself included, thought he should be an all-star this year and put up those type of numbers. You think he's kind of being consumed and feeling the pressure of all those expectations and all that weight right now?
I think he is. And I think it's strange because he's never been that guy. He's always been like sort of the, I don't care. It's fine. That's like his personality, is to be sort of brash and unapologetic. And to me, it's always been fun. Like, I like his personality. To me, it's like very matter of fact and like, I'm good. I think this is the first time I've seen like it feels like someone's putting their thumb on top of his head and pushing him down, and he feels it. And I think he's starting to come around, as a player. But at the same time, like, you spent like 8 games struggling, and then maybe 5 games where you're starting to really expand and blow up and be yourself. Now, the next 20 games, we need you to make your teammates better, because that's where we're at. We're at the point where like 6 assists a game is not enough, especially when no one else is averaging more than, like, Halliburton's at 5.1. No one else is averaging anything. So you've got to figure out, Fox has to be the guy at this moment to say, okay, I got right. I'm feeling much better about what I'm doing. And now I've got to make everyone around me better. I got to figure that side of the game out and drag this team along with me. And that's where I think he just hasn't got there yet. And I hope that comes quickly, or that it comes at all, because you never know. There's possibility it never comes, because I think there are a lot of players that get really good, but they never figure out how to include everybody and make everyone succeed with them.
We'll ask you a question we were talking about earlier. Were our expectations too high? Because he's still good. Like, De'Aaron's a very good ball player.
Mm-hmm.
But we thought what we saw before he got sick last year was what we were going to see for 82 games this year.
Hey, I think he can average 25 and 8 on this season still. Like, I don't know why it wouldn't be, why you would think he couldn't. He's shown the ability to average 29 points a game over a month. So I think a lot of people are really frustrated and overanalyzing a super small sample size. I mean, in the small sample size with him, it was like 7 or 8 games. And even one of those games, he was really good. He was okay. I mean, he scored 27 points in the opener. And then everyone was going crazy because he struggled for like 6 more games. So we got to game like 8 and people are panicking. Well, there's only 5 games after that. And he's been pretty solid throughout most of them. He's had moments.
When is it not a small sample size? When can we panic? Not that we're panicking, but, you know, speaking for the crew out here, when can we collectively panic?
Well, I think when you see the entire thing fall apart, which, you know, might be on the brink of it right now, if they hit the reset button, then it's like, okay, it's time to panic, because this thing is gonna, like, there's a hard reboot going on. That's the moment.
But I meant more for De'Aaron.
For De'Aaron, like, look at his stats over the last like 6-7 games. His stats are very similar to what we saw in the past. I mean, he's shooting close to 40% from 3. He's shooting 80% from the free throw line. He's shooting 47, 48% from the field. That's what you're waiting to see him snap out of that early snafu. That, you know, like we talked about it too. Remember, Buddy Hield spent 33 games like shooting like 36% from the field last year. That, like, players have moments where they're in a downturn and they're not figuring out. Like, I want to see him fire and hit more 3-pointers, but more 3-pointers like within the flow of the game, which is something that he has not done. You know, we saw the rush 3 that Rico Hines became a meme over. That was one of those situations where it's like, look, you're not there yet, but, you know, we're okay with you being confident enough to shoot it. I want to see him have a game where he goes like 5 of 7. Most of them are catch and shoots off a Halliburton breakdown and kick, or hockey assists where it goes to the corner around the horn, back to Fox really quick, and he shoots a wide open 3. I want to see more of that. I want to see less of him off the dribble at the top of the key. And then overall, he's got to break down the opposing defense and find ways to involve everybody. Chemezi, if he's playing, but Rashawn Holmes, you can't leave these guys hungry all the time, because then you worry about what it means on the other end of the court, and are they functioning within the flow of the team? And it starts to, too many questions start to pop up.
We got time.
We were going to let James go here. It's a 4 o'clock game.
You can be quick.
No, it's not a quick. I'll ask you before. It's not a quick question, so I'll ask you another time. It's all good.
Well, keep your phone by you just in case something goes bad in Detroit. You might have to come back tomorrow. So
I'm ready.
Yeah. I mean, we're planning game days the rest of the week, so we're gonna see a lot of you. But just in case, keep your phone by your side. I know you got to get to the press conference, man. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Appreciate you.
Anytime, guys. Right. Everybody can just calm down.
No,
give it a little bit of time. Let's just give it a little bit more time, and then you guys can panic.
This is a pressure cooker, James. No, we will not come. This is Philly-like pressure.
Whoever spoke to The Athletic needs to calm down, because they're the ones that got us. I mean, we were like right there. And then the athletic report comes out and it's like, now we're here.
Yeah, they threw some logs on the fire.
Yeah. No,
gasoline soaked logs.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I hate chaos. And this team, it just can't.
It's all you know, James.
It's all I know. Yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thanks, guys.